Hey there, How To listeners. Before we start the show, I'm going to let you know about a story coming up a little later. It's from one of our partners, SAP. Is your business reaching an exciting turning point? Are you ready to seize the moment for growth? Well, when you're facing tough decisions, SAP can help you be ready for anything that happens next. To learn more, head to sap.com/be-ready. And stick around to hear how the president of an esports league seized the moment.
This episode is brought to you by Choiceology, an original podcast from Charles Schwab. Hosted by Katie Milkman, an award-winning behavioral scientist and author of the best-selling book How to Change, Choiceology is a show about the psychology and economics behind our decisions. Hear true stories from Nobel laureates, authors, athletes, and more about why we do the things we do. Listen to Choiceology at schwab.com/podcast or wherever you listen.
Hello.
You are my person. You will always be my person.
I really want to find my person, like Christina Yang says in Grey's Anatomy, or a good crew, like in Friends. The one thing I feel that I am missing is strong platonic relationships and friendships.
Welcome to How To. I'm Carvell Wallace. Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, hey, what happened to all my good friends? As we grow older, it's hard to meet new people and create actual relationships with them, ones that are deeper than surface-level acquaintances. Finding friends feels so easy as kids, or at least it does standing from where we are now. So why is it so awkward to form new connections as an adult? Well, this week's listener is wondering just that.
My name is Katie. I work at a school in the west side of Chicago.
Katie is one of the many young adults who were partway through college during the normal times, and then, you guessed it, the pandemic hit.
At first, we thought we were getting an extra long spring break, which I really needed. I was feeling burned out. So the first couple, weeks of the pandemic, I was really enjoying myself. I was reconnecting with my family.
But then came the longer lockdowns and isolation, and the new reality was harder to stomach.
Obviously, you didn't have the graduation. My sorority had some parties that obviously didn't happen, so I was disappointed about that. And I was just not really connecting with anybody because I am not the best long-distance texter. So it was just kind of like, oh, I guess that week before spring break was the last time I ever hung out with my college friends, and that's the end of that. Yeah.
It's funny because my daughter is moving to college literally tomorrow. And so yesterday we were like packing and going through all of her old stuff, and we found this letter that she wrote at the beginning of pandemic where she was talking about how lonely she was, and she was like all I do is sit in my room and it just really put me back in that state to hear her like remembering it. And so I'm wondering what your life did look like during that time. Did you spend a lot of time with your family? Did you try and meet friends? I remember there was like people were meeting for like, let's go for a walk.
My mom will say it's one of her favorite times to look back on. I did pick up crochet and started my Etsy shop, so that was great. And I have a dog, and we would just take him for walks in the forest.
As nice as it was camping out with her family, there wasn't a lot of contact with outside friends.
I would definitely classify myself as an introvert, socially awkward type of person. I have one friend that does still live in the area, but we've kind of drifted apart. We occasionally do things that we both enjoy, like kayaking or going line dancing, but I am not really her number one priority. She has other friends that she's closer to, and we don't have a lot to talk about anymore.
It's a story that is just so familiar. Loneliness is real. Modern life can be isolating, and there are probably a lot of people in this boat. But don't fret, we've got a friend for you. Danielle Bayard Jackson is a podcaster, a public speaker, and a professional friendship coach. Yeah, that's a real thing. And she's been featured all over major media outlets. And she has spent a lot of time thinking about human connection.
First of all, I feel for you, Katie, because this is definitely a story I've heard so many times, so many variations. And so I understand Katie's maybe frustration and curiosity about how to make this happen.
Besides the obvious fact that we were all sequestered away from each other for so long, what do you think are some other ways that the pandemic took a toll on many of our relationships?
I think a lot of people, our social muscles atrophied a bit. We weren't out there. Maybe for 2 years, we're in the house trying to figure things out. So a lot of us feel a little rusty right now as we kind of come out of that. Our friendships dwindled away and some of our social networks did shrink a little bit, but I've had people report to me that they had stronger friendships because perhaps they became more focused and intentional on those they wanted to prioritize most because we had to be more discerning about who we were going to engage with.
Okay, so we can't just blame the pandemic because the truth is it's hard finding and sustaining friendships even in the best of times. So in today's show, let's shake off the social rust. We're going to figure out how to find potential friends and figure out why we crave those deeper friendships in the first place. We'll even untangle ourselves just a little bit from the idea that we need to find our one person to be happy. Stick with us. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies all lined up and ready to compare, so it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates, quote at progressive.com to join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This podcast is brought to you by Slate Studios and SAP. How do you know when to seize the moment for growth? When your opportunity arrives, you need to be ready. From expanding into new markets to hiring, business leaders face so many tough decisions.
My name is Brendan Donahue, president of the NBA 2K League. The NBA 2K League is a professional esport run by the NBA and 2K, where we take 30 million people who play the game of NBA 2K and we find the best 125 in the world to compete in our league.
In March of 2020, the start of the pandemic spurred the league to take steps it never imagined. And with SAP tools, they knew they were ready.
We could have postponed our season like a lot of other sports leagues did. We decided to seize the moment. We created a competition that could be done virtually. We had the NBA 2K League on major sports networks for 17 weeks. That moment gave us a chance to talk to a mass audience across the world. So the majority of our fans, less than 1%, will ever step foot in an NBA arena to watch a game live. But you have this significant fandom and excitement for the game, and so that's really where we think we play a role. Our first season, we had 650,000 people watch our finals in season 1. Now our finals this past year, we had 2.2 million people watching.
NBA 2K League seized the moment for growth. Will you? Head to sap.com/be-ready to learn more.
You know, this is going to sound like a really obvious question, but what is it that we gain from these platonic, intimate platonic relationships?
Yeah, it's interesting that you started by that question by saying, I know this feels very obvious. I think that's because we know intuitively that friendship is important. We all know that, but it's hard to kind of like articulate why. We just know that it matters. The longest running study on happiness out of Harvard has found out the number one factor that impacts your overall life satisfaction and well-being is the quality of your relationships, not your income, not your marital status, the quality of your relationships with other people. It's also found to be the number one preventer of depression. And so I know in our brains, we know intellectually, okay, friendship's important, but it really has such an impact on how healthy we are, how well we are, and how happy we feel about our lives. And so I think the disconnect for many of us might be that we so often push friendship to the margins of our lives, especially as busy adults. And Katie, how old are you, Katie?
I'm 26.
Okay. And so the research tells us that our social networks grow and grow and grow until about the age of 26, at which point they begin to dwindle exponentially. And it might not come as a surprise because at that time, you know, we're a couple years out of college, some of us, right? Our friends are now prioritizing different things. For some of your friends, their focus right now is establishing family ties. They want to get married. They want to have kids. For some, it's advancing in their career. We're spread out everywhere. And so it does become a little trickier. And so when you remove the social backdrop of school, where everyone's sharing the same, what we call life tasks, you know, we're going to class, and so this might be the first time that you've had to figure out, oh my gosh, I'm on my own and I'm going to have to learn how to facilitate these connections without the support of schooling in the background. And so like where you are right now, many of us have been, and you will be again.
So here's our first insight. It is totally normal to want friends at any stage of life. Danielle's right. Life is always going to be throwing transitions our way. So it's not uncommon to wonder, where is my group? Where can I find that connection and support? Just know that we all face this feeling. And you're not alone in seeking companionship at any age. Katie, can you talk a little bit about what some of your fears are about? Like, what are some of the things that you feel like you might be afraid of or worried about or struggle with the idea of just going out and joining communities?
I'm generally like good in groups. I do like a volleyball club, and that's good. But I think they're like familiar strangers, or they're not friends. I guess I'm just looking for the next step. Like, sure, we're great at playing volleyball and we're good at that, or we are great at our job and we have fun at work, but I want like the next step where you do something else together. And
then do you feel like there's a fear of just being like, hey, this seems cool. Do you want to get coffee at some point? Do you feel like it's hard for you to like just invite people to that next level?
Yeah. I mean, especially like in a group, 30 people, who do you pick to invite? Like, that's kind of daunting. You can't invite all of them. You do have to pick somebody. So
Right. Yeah.
How do you pick which person? I don't know.
So I think there's like so much community and fun in a group. There's lots of cool and interesting dynamics. But if the goal is also to have these friendships where we feel seen and there's more depth and there's more connection, you might find that one way to supplement those group outings is to find those people who you think that you would click with, whatever your criteria is, and to find a way to connect with them outside of the group setting, or in addition to. It doesn't have to replace it, but in addition to that, because I want you to also have relationships where you feel like you can be, vulnerable and you guys are getting to know each other. And sometimes that does happen in a quieter space.
It also feels to me too like the question of like looking for a friend sometimes doesn't benefit from like the feeling of auditioning for the best friend. Like, I choose you to be the best friend, let's go. But actually that it can grow naturally from just having first step being open to having just genuine interested conversations with the person and letting that be enough. like for today, like I maybe just had an interesting conversation with this person at volleyball and it was great and that was it. And that's all we're doing today is we're just having the conversation. And then maybe next time we come back and we might have another conversation with them, or we might find out that no, not this time. We're going to talk to someone else.
Yes, absolutely. And again, hey, this might be helpful advice. So like, how can I just be present in this moment? How can I just be like, man, we had crochet club today and like, that was a good way to spend my Thursday night. Like, man, so re-energizing. I loved it. Now, of course, if you meet somebody at crochet club and you guys are like hitting it off and you find yourself leaving more curious about them, well, then, hey, let's reach out and make it happen, right? Let's say they mention something about liking hiking, right? So at the end of the conversation, you're going to say, okay, well, it was so good talking to you. And hey, I know you mentioned that you like hiking. I actually know 2 spots that are amazing that I think you'd appreciate. What's your Instagram or what's your number? I'll send you a link. Okay. So I might not do it right now when I'm with them. I'm going to wait and I'm going to set future me up with an opportunity to keep momentum. So maybe the next day I send them the link. 1, it shows reliability because I follow through. 2, it shows my attentiveness and it helps me keep momentum. So the next day I might send that link and say, hey, so good meeting you. Here's that link that I promised. Okay. So it gives me momentum and it also gave me their contact information. So it gives me all the things I need to kind of keep things rolling, because I know one fear people often have is like, after that first conversation, they're like, okay, well, that was fun, but is it awkward to reach out? Do I follow up? Was that weird? So set it up like I have a reason to talk to you again. Okay. Then eventually, after you build some rapport, maybe on social or text or whatever feels good to you, then you're going to invite them out. You want to be very specific with your invitation, even though it feels very scary and like a chance for rejection. But that's what vulnerability is.
Danielle calls this the movie trailer method. The idea is to give somebody a compelling look at coming attractions so they'll actually show up to see the movie.
So instead of saying like, hey, we should get together sometime, or like, hey, yeah, next weekend, if you're free, let me know. There's so much like vagueness and ambiguity. And then we're wondering who's supposed to do the mental labor of going first. It never happens. And so you're going to be specific and you're going to preview the experience the way that movie trailers preview the experience for us. So they make it easy to say yes. So you might say, hey, I hope you like that hiking spot that I recommended. As a matter of fact, there is this, this speaker coming to this venue down the street from me, and he talks about his journey with hiking. It's next Saturday at 7. I was thinking we could go for like an hour or so and check it out. What do you think? Okay. I am telling you the duration, the time, the place, the day, and it makes it very easy for a person to say, yes, absolutely. Especially for introverts who need to know for how long to charge their social battery. So when I say like, hey, do you want to grab a glass of wine for like, I don't know, like an hour or so and chat? People are like, oh my gosh, I can commit to that. Okay. Now, if they say no, or they're not available, that's fine. We're looking for people who will negotiate with us. So if they can't make it, I'm looking for the person who says, darn it, I cannot do Saturday, but what about next Tuesday? Okay. A willingness to work with me. If it's a person who's like, oh, can't make it, sorry, then I'm not going to internalize it. I'm not going to feel like I failed. I'm just going to say, oh, okay, I'll either try again next time, or I'll leave it alone and take that as the data that I need to know that they're not into it, and I'll direct my attention somewhere else.
What about the people who say, I can't make it this time, but let me know when the speaker is back in town again, and maybe I can go that time? Are they saying no, but in like a really polite way, or are they really interested and just can't make it?
Okay, great question. Whenever people tell us things, we're trying to decipher what they really meant by that. So if somebody tells us, oh gosh, I can't make it, but maybe next time, we'll think to ourselves, oh my gosh, that was her polite way of saying, never contact me again. and then we allow that interpretation to dictate our behavior. We're like, oh, she's letting me down easily. I'll never do this again. But something that it takes a lot of courage, but will solve a lot of problems, is starting to take people at their word. And if somebody says, oh my gosh, I can't make it, but let me know next weekend, I'm going to trust that they want me to let them know next weekend. And on the other end, that means that we need to speak directly and honestly, right? If we are not interested, saying, no, I can't make it, but thanks for the invitation, and shutting it down. So we've got to speak honestly. And we also have to learn to take people at their word, because it'll drive us nuts trying to figure out if a person was genuine in their invitation. Do they really like us, or is it like a pity invite? And so I think you'll actually find a lot of freedom in believing what people say.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good advice.
So the elephant in the room for me listening to this is like fear of rejection. I think a lot of the reason why people are always trying to figure out what a person really means is because we don't want to be caught by surprise. We don't want to be blindsided. Part of the reason that people are trying to like organize, like use all these words to say, to like leave all these outs is because we don't want someone to be like, ew, no, I don't want to go to a thing with you. Screw up. Like, this is disgusting. Make me sick. It's just this like fear of rejection. So we're always trying to like navigate around it. And I guess I wonder, Danielle, and also really Katie, like, how does the fear of rejection live for you? How do you experience it? And also, what do you do about it?
Yeah, Katie, let me ask you, because I hear some like hesitation and like uncertainty as you navigate all this. Do you have recent experiences that are top of mind where it didn't go well or you felt rejected that are kind of that are the reason for some of this hesitation you're experiencing?
Yeah. I have tried to invite a couple people to do things, and it just hasn't gone well, so I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, God, I feel for you so much, and your bravery in being open right now. And I hear the disappointment, like the pain in your voice. And there are people listening, I know 100%, who are in the same position. There is something known as the recency bias. And the idea is that we tend to dictate what our future will be based on the most recent experience. And so if you recently had an experience where people let you down, I could see why it has you thinking, oh, this is how it's going to be. People let you down. I'm not going to do this again. And it takes courage to do it again. And so one thing I want you to try to work on, because I know it's easier said than done, is I want you to start telling yourself, I am a connector. That is who I am. That is what I do. If I like people, I pursue them. If I'm curious about somebody, I ask them questions. That's who I am, as opposed to it being a reaction. Well, it's something I'll do if people reach out to me first. No, this is who you are. You like people. You're a likable person. And so you reach out if you find somebody you like. If it doesn't go well, I want us to do the work of telling ourselves, oh, well, it's just not a good match. Or maybe it wasn't the right time for this person's life. Instead of internalizing it of like, what does this mean about me? Am I not likable? And so it really sucks when people let us down. But I do hope to God that you can muster up the courage to tell yourself, that doesn't say anything about me, but I value connection. And I'm going to continue to pursue that because I do believe that my people are out there. And so I know that's easier said than done, but it's the kind of courage I want you to have, because 26 is so young. It's so young. And there are so many people who are just waiting to be connected with you.
Thanks.
Katie, if you're comfortable, can you tell us a little bit about one of those experiences so we can understand what happened for you and what it felt like?
Sure. I went to a group bonfire event. It was through church. I ended up talking to two sisters. They were really nice, funny, and at the end of the night, we were talking about kayaking. I go kayaking a lot, so they mentioned that they would love to go kayaking and they'd never been before. We agreed to connect about it, and I got their numbers, and every time I texted them, they seemed busy, but they said maybe next time, and so that went on for a couple times in July, and then I decided, that was kind of the last time that I would text them because school was starting and I don't really have the time to go kayaking anymore. So that was that.
Yeah, man, that is such a bummer. I think you did the right thing by trying more than once, because you never know. The first time really could be, it's just a calendar thing. So I think it's bold and necessary to do it twice to give the benefit of the doubt, right? We said take them at their word and to try again. And I think I also applaud you for knowing when to stop, for saying, hey, I've tried and I'm going to let this go. So I think there's like something to be said there. That's wonderful. Are you able to go back to like what you were thinking in terms of the thoughts or assumptions or things you started making either about yourself?
I started thinking that my judgment was off because I thought we had a good connection and that, this was a good start. But obviously, that didn't seem to be the case. So I was, bummed about, my judgment when it came to feeling like we had a connection.
Danielle, have you ever had that experience of, reaching out to someone and having them respond in a way that made you feel rejected?
Yes. Yeah. It's so funny. People don't ask me that often. They take all my confidence in the interviews and they're like, oh, surely she's never been rejected. I'll tell you what, Katie, I would like to think of myself as a social, charismatic, likable person. Mm-hmm. And I have had people who are just not feeling it. Mm-hmm. And, it is awkward. It stings a little bit. But I think the difference maker is the message you tell yourself and how you recover. Instead of saying like, oh gosh, well, maybe I was saying all the wrong things and maybe I'm not as funny as I thought. And maybe I'm not. No. I tell myself like, maybe I did fumble, or maybe she was not really fond of, things that I shared. Man, that kind of stings, but okay, well, I'll cross her off the list and I'll try again with somebody new. And, I know this sounds like super, like a little hippy dippy. Okay. But, it also helps to remember like, if there are any parts of yourself that you're not comfortable with, there will always be this fear that it's going to be exposed when you meet people, or that it's going to be affirmed if a person rejects you, right? Like if I think I'm not interesting or I'm not cool, then if somebody doesn't want to hang out with me, my brain goes to like, see, I knew it. It's because I'm not interesting enough, And so a lot of it just kind of like, I think stirs up, we're all dealing with our stuff, with something personal. And so I think we've got to work that stuff out as we, venture through our friend making journey, because, we do bring a lot of our personal stuff to the table. It's a relationship like any other. And relationships require us to look at our own stuff. And so having that self-confidence kind of will help on that journey as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely is like a recent bias since, I did try to reach out to a couple people, end of July and try and make some connections, and it didn't work out. But I know that I'm resilient, and I'll keep trying again, and I'm sure I'll make those connections.
Here's our next insight. Rejection can be crushing and can fuel our deepest anxieties about social ineptitudes and how we're perceived. But as impossible as it may seem in the moment, we can recover. Realize that you are not your insecurities. You can keep plugging away until you find that person who does want to go on the hike or go kayaking or get that cocktail. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, Danielle has some really valuable advice for finding friends at the office without the work drama. Don't go anywhere. Are you still struggling to get that perfect night's sleep? Well, Brooklinen's 20% off Labor Day sale is finally here, so it's the perfect time to invest in the rest you deserve. Brooklinen is the internet's favorite sheets, and while there is no such thing as the perfect sleep, there is the ideal fabric for every kind of sleeper. You can cool off with their crisp classic percale weave, or try their best-selling buttery smooth luxe sateen sheets. Are you looking for a serious upgrade to your home? Well, then go ahead and grab a bed and bath bundle for a good night's rest and a new at-home spa routine. Brooklinen is the one-stop shop for comfort that makes upgrading your home feel effortless. Invest in comfort that'll last with 20% off everything at Brooklinen during their Labor Day sale happening now. Shop in-store or online at brooklinen.com. That's BROOKLINEN.com. Missed the sale? Visit brooklinen.com and sign up for emails to be kept up to date on exclusive offers, new products, and much more. At the end of your first year, Discover credit cards automatically double all the cash back you've earned. That's right. Everything you've earned doubled. All the cash back from eating at your favorite soup dumpling restaurant? Doubled. All the cash back from that trip where you sort of learned how to snowboard? Also doubled. And the best part, you don't have to do anything ridiculous to get it. Nope, Discover does it automatically. Seriously though, see terms and check it out for yourself at discover.com/match.
This episode is brought to you by Choiceology, an original podcast from Charles Schwab. Choiceology is a show all about the psychology and economics behind our decisions. Each episode shares the latest research in behavioral science and dives into questions like, can we learn to make smarter decisions? Or what is the power of negative thinking? The show is hosted by Katie Milkman. She's an award-winning behavioral scientist, professor at the Wharton School, and author of the best-selling book, How to Change. In each episode, Katie talks to authors, athletes, Nobel laureates, and more about why we make irrational choices and how we can make better ones. Choiceology is out now. Listen and subscribe at schwab.com/podcast or find it wherever you listen.
We're back with Katie and our friendship coach extraordinaire, Danielle Bayard Jackson.
You know, in your message, you said, I don't want to just have work friends. Talk to me about that. What is the concern you have with your friendship circle being made up of your coworkers?
Mostly, work drama coming into my life through those friendships. I had a friend in college who also was friends with her coworkers. They all worked at a restaurant together, and then there was some drama going on because one of the girls was cheating on a guy who also worked at the restaurant, and my friend was put in the middle of it, and I was like, that happens at restaurants and in college, but that can happen in schools too. I don't want to be part of drama at work and have it come into my life. And so, I don't know. I'm a little careful about have my work friend be my best friend in real life too.
Okay, I think something that's helpful that stuck out to me right away about what you're saying now and your original email that you sent to the show is I wonder if it needs to become like a mindset address first, at the risk of sounding life coachy. But what I'm hearing is a little bit of panic and uncertainty around, I have work friends, but my friends from college, this was such a great group and I felt comfortable, but I don't want to just have work friends. And I think maybe if I can help maybe close that gap a little bit, that mental gap between, well, there's best friends and then there's work friends. A lot of us, we romanticize what we had when we were in school, and we get a little discouraged, oh, when will I ever find that again? And in your message, you said, I'm looking for, quote, my person, like on Grey's Anatomy. I'm looking for my, group, like on the show Friends. And I think these are really great illustrations to kind of offer a picture of what it is we want to, pursue. But I also don't want you to become discouraged because you have these ideals in your head of the kinds of friendships you want, and then are dissatisfied because we don't have them. So can you find your Christina Yang and your Meredith Grey? Sure. Can you one day complete your friends group on the show? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But what if I gave you something that's a more manageable goal? And I think a natural byproduct of that might be to find your people. And what if when you have conversations with coworkers, when you have conversations with people, outside of school, if instead of putting that pressure on it, bringing that pressure to the table of okay, let's see if this can be my person. Let's see. What if you just prioritize connection instead of friendship? And I'm saying that as a friendship coach. But what if you allowed yourself to just be curious about this person and ask some questions about themselves and give yourself permission to relax into seeing what this might be and to enjoying the present conversation and being able to walk away and say man, that was a great conversation. I needed that tonight. It lifted my spirits. What if we just took it conversation and we prioritize connection, because a natural byproduct of that will be forming friendships.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm sure that would make, work more enjoyable too, because I'll know my coworkers better. We'll be able to have more fun and just get along better.
Yeah. And there's also something, if we're talking about your coworkers, there's also something known as multiplexity. And the richest friendships are those that have multiplexity. And what that means are people who fulfill multiple roles in our life. So it's great to have a coworker who becomes a friend because they fulfill lots of different roles. So you might want to start by being curious about the people you see all of the time. There's research out of the University of Kansas. They attempted to kind of quantify how long it takes to make a friend. And they found that it takes about 90 hours. That's 90. Okay. 90 hours to make a friend, which feels like forever. But that's why you had such close friends in school. You saw them every day for like 8 hours a day. And so the next best place in, adulthood is going to be work. You are certainly not limited to that, but you're seeing these people all day long. You guys are talking, you're bonding over your, being frustrated with your boss, and so that's a good breeding ground for friendships. But if you want to make friendships outside of work, that's certainly possible as well. It's just something to consider.
Yeah. Well, I do want to bring up this thing that Katie said, though, about being afraid of like getting involved, that like, in other words, wanting to keep the work and social life separate because of the potential for like drama in the social life to spill over into the workplace. Like, there are those people. I mean, I'm probably one of them who's like, when you're at work, you're like, I don't want to get involved because I don't want to be involved in whatever drama. I just want to do my job and go home. First of all, Katie, is that sort of how it feels to you? Like that's really one of the things that you're worried about too, is that friendships could lead to inter-office drama that would make your workplace suck?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to be Switzerland, and if somebody comes to me with a problem, I don't want to have any, like, feelings one way or the other because they're talking bad about my best friend. I want to just give them real work advice and not be swayed one way or the other, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. That's totally valid. I'm a former high school teacher. And so I know how quickly you can get into like, we're just co-teachers. And then it's like a happy hour after work. And then before you know, it's a little messy in the, in the teacher's lounge next week. And so
it's always the happy hours. That's always where it goes left.
It's dangerous, man. It's dangerous. And so I hear you, and you definitely want to be careful about that. So I appreciate the fact that you have people at work who feel friend-ish, we'll settle for friend-ish because it does make your experience in the workplace better. Research finds. So we need friends there too.
Okay, so here's our next insight. It takes a long time to make really, really good friends, which is why finding friends at work actually isn't the worst idea. But if that feels too risky, maybe look in other places where you naturally spend a lot of time.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it before. I've always thought that my hobbies and my interests were more individualized and things that I did on my own. I used to sell things at the farmer's market, which was quite fun during the summer. I am not sure about like crafting communities or things like that. I would have to do some Googling.
Yeah. Well, let's just start with the farmer's market thing, which I love for so many reasons. One, you told us you're an introvert. And when you're standing behind a little booth at the farmer's market, are you talking about like selling things at the farmer's market, right?
Yeah, it was a little rough, but I did get through it and sell, some stuffies and things like that.
Yeah. And so, you've got a lot of foot traffic, which allows you to meet a lot of different people. You've got things you're looking at or people are selling and goods in the marketplace. So that's something you can point to. It's an easy conversation starter. If you're working a booth, you've got the two people on all sides of you who are stationary. And so you guys become conversation buddies throughout the day. So I love that for you because it's less pressure to like initiate a conversation on your own. I also like that idea because it's a repeated activity. And if we're trying to make the research work for us, and it says that time is a key ingredient in making friends, that repeated exposure, you're going to start to see the same faces. So I love that idea for you because it seems like it's, not too demanding of your time, allows you to meet a lot of people, and allows you to see some of the same faces repeatedly, which are all key ingredients of friend making.
Mm-hmm. Danielle, do you have any this is maybe a weird question, like starter questions for me just to like remember and pull out of my back pocket to try and like ask people?
Yeah. So let me say this. Sure. There are a couple of questions about, I know people tend to say, so what do you do for a living? Or how was your day? Things like that. But you can ask people like, you can ask them about their passions instead of what they do for work. Because that's something I'm trying to get away from too, is doing the very American thing of asking people what they do for a living. And so, asking them how they spend their days, that's a little different. Or you can comment on something that you see visually. But I'm going to say this though, to challenge you a little bit. I know that it's comforting to have some questions in your back pocket. It feels nice to have that back there and it's helpful. But the research shows that you're more likely to enjoy your conversation when you are curious about the other person and curious about what you're going to learn instead of when you come prepared with what you're going to say. So I can give you some questions, sure, but I want you to get more comfortable with showing up and telling yourself like, all right, let's see what's about to happen here. And the last thing I'll tell you too is, as an introvert, I want you to have the courage to insert yourself, to contribute, to showcase your personality as well. Because I know you mentioned groups a lot, which I think is really interesting, and extroverts kind of taking the lead. But you want people to also walk away feeling like they got to know you too, and not just that they entertained you as extroverts. So I don't know if that's ever the case, but I'm hearing some of that in our conversation. I want you to get more confident in showing who you are, because there are people who are just going to like love you for being you, but getting comfortable showcasing all of you from the very beginning.
Katie, do you feel like you are at all better equipped to approach some new people and try to connect?
Yeah, I think it's just like Danielle said, I definitely had, that dream idea, the concept of Christina Yang, that I was putting a lot of pressure on it. So I'll definitely try and just go with the flow and see what happens. No prepared questions.
Yeah, no, keep that intentionality for sure. I love that about you. But yeah, just keep your heart open to all of the possibilities instead of restricting yourself to just finding your besties. Keep your heart and eyes open to all the possibilities. And I think you'll be surprised by the connections you form along the way.
Well, one thing I know is that I really enjoyed talking to you, Katie. I feel like I would be friends with you if we met. And you just seem like such a cool and interesting person. So I know that you're going to find people, and I know that it's out there for you if much worse people than you have found friends. So I believe you can do it. Danielle, thank you so much for your advice. It's been so great learning about all the research and just benefiting from all the thought you've put into this work. And I'm so happy that you were able to spend this time with us.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me and allowing me to lend my voice to this conversation. Katie, I'll be thinking of you, and we all are excited to hear your updates on the connections that you form. So I applaud you for your bravery and wish so much luck to you.
Yes.
Thanks.
It's so vulnerable. It can feel so cringy to try and make new friends. And I can see why sometimes we would rather just be alone and feel sad than to face the potential of rejection. But life can be so hard, and we need so much support that we have to do the work of finding people who can care for us and love us and help us through breakups and go to Target with us and listen to us gripe about our jobs. So if you are feeling like you could use a friend, or if you feel like you could be a friend, then I hope you take some of this advice. It may seem daunting, but the rewards can be very, very great. Huge thanks to Katie for sharing her friendship journey with us, and to Danielle Bayard Jackson for such meaningful advice. We'll link to her website in the show notes. Do you have a problem that needs solving? Send us a note at howto@slate.com or leave us a voicemail at 646-495-4001, and we might have you on the show. And if you like what you heard today, please tell a friend. That helps us help more people. How To's executive producers Derek John, Rosemary, Belson, Kevin Bendis, and Jabari Butler produced this episode. Merritt Jacob is senior technical director. Charles Duhigg created the show. And I'm Carvell Wallace. Thanks for listening.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Heidecker. You know me, Tim and Eric, Bridesmaids, and Fantastic Four. I'd like to personally invite you to listen to Office Hours Live with me and my co-hosts, DJ Doug Pound.
Hello.
And Vic Berger.
Howdy.
Every week we bring you laughs, fun, games, and lots of other surprises. It's live. We take your Zoom calls.
Music.
We love having fun. Excuse me?
Songs. Vic said something.
Songs.
Music.
I like having fun. I like to laugh. I like to meet people who can make me laugh. Please subscribe now.